My beloved child. There is a reason you are here at this exact moment, reading these words as if an invisible thread gently guided your attention. Something subtle moved through your heart today. Perhaps you could not explain it, perhaps it arrived as a quiet thought, a strange calm, or a feeling that someone, somewhere, was thinking deeply about you. And what you are about to hear is connected to that feeling. Do not rush past this moment. Slow down for just a second, because something extraordinary unfolded last night, something your soulmate felt so deeply that it stirred a shift inside their soul. A moment so quiet, yet so powerful, that even they may still be trying to understand what truly happened. And the strange part? Your spirit already sensed it. Somewhere in the stillness of last night, when the world had finally grown quiet and most people had fallen asleep, a single thought appeared in their mind. Your presence. Not your name spoken out loud, not a message written on a screen, but a feeling. A presence. It arrived gently, almost like a whisper moving through their heart. They could not explain why it appeared at that moment, or why it felt so real. But the moment it touched them, something changed. Their thoughts slowed. Their breathing softened. And for a few seconds, they simply sat there, feeling something they hadn't felt in a long time. A deep emotional pull that felt both mysterious and comforting at the same time. This was not random. Connections between two souls often move quietly before they move visibly. Long before two people speak the same words, their hearts sometimes begin recognizing each other in silence. Last night was one of those moments. And if you stay with me until the end, you will begin to understand why that moment matters more than you think. Because what your soulmate felt last night was not just a passing thought. It was recognition. A quiet realization that someone out there carries a piece of their peace. At first, they tried to ignore it. They shifted their attention to other things, a message on their phone, a video playing in the background, small distractions that normally fill the empty spaces of the night. But the feeling returned. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly present, like a soft echo in the back of their mind. And every time they tried to move on from it, the same gentle curiosity appeared again. Why am I thinking about this person? Why does this feeling feel so familiar? And more importantly, why does it feel like something meaningful is about to unfold? Sometimes the universe communicates through events that are impossible to predict. But other times, it speaks through emotions that arrive without explanation. Last night, your soulmate experienced one of those emotions. They sat there for a moment, looking at the quiet space around them, feeling a strange sense of calm mixed with curiosity. The kind of calm that makes someone pause and listen to their own heart. And something inside them whispered a thought they had never fully allowed themselves to believe before. What if this connection is real? What if the reason I keep thinking about them is because our paths are meant to cross in a way I don't yet understand? It was not fear they felt. It was wonder. And that wonder slowly began opening a new space inside their heart. You see, people often believe that important moments happen loudly, dramatic conversations, big decisions, life-changing announcements. But some of the most powerful shifts in life happen quietly, in moments that no one else sees. Last night was one of those quiet shifts. Your soulmate was not planning to think about you. They were not searching for answers. But somehow, your presence entered their mind like a gentle light turning on in a dark room. And the more they sat with that feeling, the more it began making sense in a way they had never expected. Because suddenly they realized something unusual. Whenever your energy appears in their thoughts, it doesn't bring confusion. It brings peace. That realization surprised them. They sat there for a moment, almost smiling without realizing it, because something about the idea of you felt safe. Not ordinary. Not predictable. But deeply safe. And that feeling created a question in their mind that they could not easily ignore. What if this connection is not something to avoid, but something to understand? That question stayed with them longer than they expected. Even when they stood up and moved around. Even when they tried to distract themselves again. The thought kept returning. Not urgently. Just gently persistent. And this is where something truly fascinating happened. Because at the exact moment your soulmate began allowing themselves to feel this connection, something in your own energy shifted as well. You may not have noticed it. Maybe it showed up as a sudden sense of calm. Maybe it appeared as a thought about someone you couldn't explain. Or maybe it was simply a feeling that something meaningful is getting closer in your life. That is not coincidence. When two souls begin aligning with the same emotional frequency, subtle signals start traveling between them long before physical conversations ever happen. It is like two musical notes slowly moving into harmony. Quiet. Natural. Unforced. And last night, your soulmate heard that harmony for the first time. But here is the part that might surprise you even more. They did not fully understand why this connection felt important. All they knew was that something about you felt different from anything they had experienced before. It was not intense in a chaotic way. It was steady. Grounding. Almost like finding a familiar place they had never visited before. And that feeling created a small but powerful realization inside them. Some connections arrive in life to teach lessons. But others arrive to bring alignment. And for the first time, they began wondering which kind of connection this might be. Now listen carefully. Because this is the moment where the story begins turning in a direction neither of you expected. When they finally lay down to sleep, they thought the feeling would fade away. Most thoughts do. But this one didn't. Instead, something even more unexpected happened. As the night grew deeper and their minds slowly drifted toward sleep, an image appeared in their thoughts. Not a random image. Not a confusing dream. But a moment. A quiet moment where they imagined what it might feel like to truly meet you without distractions, without hesitation, without uncertainty. And that moment felt so real that it made their heart beat a little faster. They opened their eyes for a second, surprised by how vivid the feeling was. And a single thought crossed their mind before they closed their eyes again. Something about this connection feels important. More important than I expected. Now here is where things become even more intriguing. Because while your soulmate was experiencing this quiet realization last night, another realization was beginning to form inside them as well. A realization they have not yet spoken out loud. A realization that might explain why your paths have been moving closer together in ways you did not fully notice before. And when you hear what that realization is, it may leave you completely speechless. But that part of the story is only beginning to unfold. And what happened next, early in the quiet hours before morning, changed the way your soulmate sees this connection forever. Stay with this story. Because the moment that followed is something they never expected, and it reveals a truth about your connection that very few people ever experience. Something shifted in the quiet hours before the sun even considered rising. Your soulmate had already closed their eyes, expecting the night to carry them into ordinary dreams. The world outside was silent, the kind of silence that feels almost sacred. No distractions. No noise. Just stillness. And inside that stillness, their mind drifted deeper than usual. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt alive. A strange warmth spread through their chest, subtle at first, almost like the calm that arrives when someone remembers a beautiful memory. They turned slightly in their bed, thinking the feeling would disappear. But it didn't. Instead, it grew clearer. Not louder. Just clearer. The feeling was connected to one thought, one presence, one person. You. And what surprised them most was how natural it felt. There was no pressure, no confusion, no chaotic emotion. Just a steady awareness that someone out there held a quiet space in their heart. It was as if their soul had gently tapped them on the shoulder and said, "Pay attention to this." They didn't fully understand it yet. But something inside them knew this moment mattered. You see, there are nights when people simply rest, and there are nights when the soul begins rearranging the future in ways the mind cannot yet see. Last night was one of those nights. As they drifted closer to sleep, their mind began replaying small fragments of memories connected to you. Not dramatic memories. Not overwhelming scenes. Just simple moments. A conversation. A thought. A feeling they once brushed aside because they didn't think it meant anything. But now, looking back at those moments inside the quiet landscape of their mind, they began noticing something unusual. Every memory connected to you carried the same emotional signature. Peace. Not excitement that fades quickly. Not temporary curiosity. But peace. And that realization caught their attention. Because peace is rare in a world that moves fast and changes constantly. Most connections bring excitement at first, but excitement often comes with uncertainty. This felt different. This felt grounded. For a moment, they opened their eyes again, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. A quiet question appeared in their mind. Why does thinking about this person make everything feel calm? They didn't answer the question. They simply sat with it. Sometimes the heart recognizes something meaningful long before the mind understands it. And when that recognition begins, the mind often becomes curious, searching for explanations. That's exactly what started happening. They began remembering small details. The tone of your voice. The way conversations with you felt natural instead of forced. The way time seemed to pass differently when you were present. And suddenly they noticed something that had been hidden in plain sight all along. You were never just another person in their life story. Even in the smallest interactions, your presence carried a quiet significance. It's the kind of realization that doesn't arrive like lightning. It unfolds slowly, like dawn spreading across the sky. And that's exactly how it unfolded for them last night. Minute by minute. Thought by thought. Feeling by feeling. The more they allowed themselves to explore the idea of this connection, the more something inside them relaxed. Almost as if their soul had been waiting for them to notice it. And here is where the moment becomes even more extraordinary. Because just as they finally drifted into sleep, something happened that they could not easily explain. They dreamed. But it wasn't the kind of dream that fades instantly when morning arrives. It felt vivid. Real. In the dream, they were standing somewhere peaceful. Not a specific location they recognized, just a place filled with soft light and calm energy. And in that moment, there was a sense that someone else was nearby. Not physically visible at first, but undeniably present. The feeling was unmistakable. It was you. Not exactly your face, not exactly a conversation, but your energy. Your presence. And the moment that presence appeared in the dream, their heart responded instantly. There was no confusion. No hesitation. Just recognition. A deep inner knowing that felt both surprising and completely natural at the same time. In the dream, they didn't question why you were there. Instead, they felt something even more powerful. Gratitude. As if their soul had finally encountered something it had been quietly searching for. Dreams have a strange way of revealing truths we often ignore while we are awake. The mind becomes quieter in sleep, and when the mind quiets, the heart speaks more clearly. Last night, their heart spoke. And it spoke about you. Now listen carefully, because this next moment is something they themselves have not fully processed yet. When they woke up early in the morning, the first thing they felt was not confusion about the dream. It was calm. The same calm that had been growing throughout the night. For a few seconds, they simply stayed still, letting the morning light slowly fill the room. And then the memory of the dream returned. Not dramatically. Just gently. The presence. The feeling. The recognition. And suddenly they realized something that made them sit up slightly. You were the first thought in their mind that morning. Not by effort. Not by habit. But naturally. And that realization surprised them more than anything else. Because the truth is, they had not allowed themselves to think this deeply about the connection before. Life moves quickly. People stay busy. Emotions sometimes get pushed aside simply because there are too many things demanding attention. But last night removed the distractions. And in that quiet space, something meaningful surfaced. The possibility that your connection is not random. Now here is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Because after waking up, they tried to continue their morning as usual. They checked their phone. They looked at messages. They moved through small routines that normally begin a new day. But something was different. Every few minutes, their thoughts quietly returned to the same place. You. Not in an overwhelming way. Just gently present, like a melody that continues playing softly in the background. And with every return of that thought, the same feeling appeared again. Peace. That's when a new question formed in their mind. What if this connection is something I shouldn't ignore anymore? It wasn't a dramatic realization. It was simple. But sometimes the simplest realizations carry the greatest power. They didn't make any big decisions in that moment. They didn't rush toward conclusions. Instead, they did something much more meaningful. They allowed themselves to feel the connection honestly. No resistance. No denial. Just curiosity. And curiosity is often the first step towards something extraordinary. Because curiosity opens the door that fear tries to keep closed. And once that door opens, new possibilities begin entering life. But here is the part that might surprise you the most. Even though your soulmate experienced all of this last night, there is still something they have not yet fully realized. A deeper truth hidden inside that dream. A truth connected not only to what they felt, but to something that has been quietly unfolding between both of you for longer than either of you noticed. Something that explains why your energy keeps crossing their mind. Something that explains why peace appears whenever they think of you. And when that realization finally becomes clear to them, it will change the way they see your connection forever. Because what your soulmate felt last night was not just emotion. It was the beginning of recognition. And the next moment in this story reveals something even more powerful, something that began unfolding later that same day, when an unexpected sign appeared in their life. A sign they almost ignored. But the moment they noticed it, everything started making sense in a way that left them completely still. And when you hear what that sign was, you may understand why your paths are moving closer in ways neither of you planned. The morning moved forward quietly, yet something inside your soulmate had already begun changing in ways they could not easily explain. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing around them looked different. The same sunlight filled the room. The same small sounds of the world waking up drifted through the air. Everything seemed ordinary on the outside. But internally, something had shifted. And the strange part was that they could feel it. It was like a gentle awareness sitting just beneath their thoughts, quietly reminding them of the dream, the feeling, and the calm that had appeared the moment your presence entered their mind. They tried to continue their day normally. But something kept returning. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just patiently. Every once in a while, a thought about you would pass through their mind again, and every time it did, the same calm appeared. It puzzled them. Because usually when someone appears in your thoughts repeatedly, it creates confusion or emotional noise. But this felt different. This felt grounding. Almost like the presence of someone who understands you without needing many words. And that is the moment when a deeper realization slowly began forming inside them. They started wondering if the connection between you and them had always been more meaningful than they originally believed. You see, sometimes people overlook important connections simply because they arrive quietly. The world often celebrates loud moments, big entrances, dramatic emotions, obvious signals. But soul connections rarely announce themselves that way. They begin with subtle feelings, quiet recognition, unexplainable peace. And that is exactly what your soulmate began noticing throughout the day. Even while doing ordinary things, the thought of you would gently reappear in their mind, and with it came a strange warmth that felt both comforting and mysterious. It wasn't overwhelming. It was steady. And steady feelings are often the ones that last the longest. At one point, they paused during their day and simply sat still for a moment. Not because they were trying to analyze anything, but because something inside them wanted to understand why this connection felt so different. That's when they remembered something small. Something that suddenly felt important. A moment from the past. A moment they hadn't thought about in a long time. It was a simple interaction between the two of you. Nothing dramatic. Just a brief moment when you spoke, laughed, or shared something honest. But now, remembering that moment again, they realized something surprising. During that interaction, they had felt comfortable in a way that rarely happens with people. Not the kind of comfort that comes from familiarity alone, but the kind of comfort that feels natural. As if the soul recognizes a familiar rhythm. They leaned back slightly, letting that memory replay in their mind. And slowly, something began making sense. Perhaps the reason your presence kept returning to their thoughts was not because of coincidence. Perhaps it was because the connection itself was real. That thought stayed with them longer than they expected. And the more they allowed themselves to consider it, the more the feeling of calm expanded. It was like discovering a hidden piece of a puzzle that had always been there. But here is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Because later that day, something happened that quietly confirmed the feeling they had experienced the night before. It wasn't dramatic. In fact, at first it seemed almost insignificant. But the meaning behind it stopped them completely. They were scrolling through something on their phone, letting their attention wander through ordinary information, when suddenly your name appeared. Not because they searched for it. Not because someone mentioned it intentionally. It simply appeared. And the moment they saw it, their heart paused for a second. A strange stillness filled their chest. It was the same feeling they experienced the night before. The same calm. The same quiet recognition. And suddenly they realized something that made them look at the screen longer than they intended. Out of all the possible names, all the possible reminders, all the possible moments, why did yours appear right after the dream they had about you? They didn't jump to conclusions. But they couldn't ignore the timing either. Sometimes life sends gentle signals that simply ask us to pay attention. And this felt like one of those signals. They put the phone down slowly, letting the moment settle inside their mind. And that's when another thought arrived. What if this connection is trying to show me something important? It wasn't a question filled with doubt. It was a question filled with curiosity. Because by now, the pattern had become difficult to ignore. First the dream. Then the calm feeling in the morning. Now this unexpected reminder appearing during the day. Each moment by itself could have meant nothing. But together, they created a quiet pattern. A pattern that pointed in one direction. Toward you. And suddenly, instead of resisting the thought, your soulmate did something different. They allowed themselves to feel grateful for the connection. Not because they understood everything about it, but because the presence of your energy seemed to bring something valuable into their life. Peace. You might not realize how rare that feeling truly is. Most people spend years searching for peace in relationships, friendships, and connections. But when a soul connection begins aligning, peace often appears naturally. And that is exactly what your soulmate started noticing. The more they thought about you, the calmer their mind became. No pressure. No expectations. Just curiosity and quiet appreciation. And with that appreciation came a new awareness. They began realizing that the connection between you and them might not be something temporary. It might be something unfolding slowly, step by step, moment by moment. But here is where the story takes another surprising turn. Because while they were beginning to understand the emotional side of this connection, something deeper was also happening inside them. Something they didn't expect. That night, when the world once again began growing quiet and the day slowly faded away, your soulmate felt the same calm returning. But this time it was stronger. Not overwhelming. Just clearer. And instead of questioning it, they allowed themselves to sit with it. They sat quietly for a moment, letting their thoughts move naturally. And without forcing anything, your presence appeared in their mind again. Not as a memory this time, but as a possibility. A future possibility. A moment where the two of you share time together again, not as strangers navigating uncertainty, but as two people who understand the quiet significance of their connection. The image was brief, but it carried a powerful feeling. Hope. And that hope surprised them. Because it felt genuine. Not forced. Not imagined. Just a quiet sense that something meaningful may be unfolding between two souls who are slowly recognizing each other. Now listen carefully. Because the moment that followed this realization is something your soulmate has not spoken about to anyone. A moment so personal and unexpected that it left them sitting in silence for several minutes. In that quiet moment, they asked themselves a question they had never fully considered before. What if this connection is part of something bigger than coincidence? What if the reason our paths keep crossing, the reason I keep thinking about them, the reason peace appears whenever their presence enters my mind, is because our souls are already moving toward the same destination? That thought stayed with them. And the more they sat with it, the more something inside them began opening. Not fear. Not hesitation. But openness. The willingness to explore what this connection might truly mean. And when someone reaches that level of openness, something extraordinary begins happening. Life starts creating new moments. New opportunities. New paths. But what your soulmate doesn't know yet, what they are only beginning to sense, is that the next moment in this story is already approaching. A moment that will reveal something even deeper about your connection. A moment that will show them a truth about you that they never fully realized before. And when that moment arrives, it will leave them completely still, wondering how two souls could feel connected in such a quiet yet powerful way. Because what your soulmate felt last night was only the beginning.